I'm Warren Sprouse. It's the Bible Forum, October 29th, 2017. You know about George Orwell? You've heard of George Orwell. George Orwell wrote a famous book. It's called Looking Back on the Spanish War. See, you thought I was going to say something else. Because he is better known for something else, isn't he? Well, he's not known for something that he wrote that is significant to our age. In 1943, George Orwell, that's not his real name. His real name is Eric Arthur Blair. But he wrote an essay entitled Looking Back on the Spanish War. He was a correspondent in that war. It was a reflection of his participation, what he found as he was working through all this. He was fighting actually with the French, with the Spanish, against the Franco-led fascists. According to Orwell, it was during the Spanish War that he became aware of the pervasive, I should say, use of propaganda in support of the modern totalitarian regimes. And he wrote, I remember saying once to Arthur Koestler, history stopped in 1936, at which he, Koestler, nodded in immediate understanding. Early in Orwell's life, he noticed that no event is ever correctly reported in a newspaper. However, in Spain, for the first time, he saw newspaper reports which did not bear any relation to the facts, not even the relationship which is implied in an ordinary lie. He wrote, I saw great battles reported where there had been no fighting, and complete silence where hundreds of men had been killed. I saw troops who had fought bravely denounced as cowards and traitors, and others who had never seen a shot fired hailed as the heroes of imaginary victories. And I saw newspapers in London retailing these lies and eager intellectuals building emotional superstructures over events that had never really happened. Sound familiar? Can you say fusion GPS? Can you say the Trump dossier? Orwell was looking at Nazi Germany, Communist Russia. He understood that the history we know is not exactly what happened in every case. He observed that people exaggerate and even create, not out of evil motive, but simply because it's what people do. But this was different. This was deliberate, and it served a larger purpose. He was concerned because, as he wrote, this kind of thing is frightening to me because it often gives me the feeling that the very concept of objective truth is fading out of the world. After all, the chances are that those lies, or at any rate similar lies, will pass into history. Yet after all, some kind of history will be written. And after those who actually remember the war are dead, it will be universally accepted. So, for all practical purposes, the lie will have become the truth. Orwell was not naive about history. But as he wrote, what he saw in his generation was a deliberate coloring of obvious fact by what the writer, or the government, wanted people to know and to remember as fact. He would later write of the existence of Big Brother. His famous book, 1984. You know, he gave it that title. He wanted to call it something about 1930s or 40s, and they said, no, it's too close, you got to spread. He went to 1984. He needed to go out just a little bit farther because Big Brother is here. He characterized it as a faceless force behind everything anyone saw or knew, rewriting events to fit the larger narrative. He would write of a government intercepting personal mail for the purpose of altering its message. Law enforcement agencies keeping more and more information about people on file. Newspapers and TV outlets binding to create a narrative only loosely connected to actual events or statements. He called it newspeak. The book's hero, Winston Smith, worked in the Ministry of Truth, rewriting and falsifying history. The ministry wrote people out of history. He said they went down the memory hole as though they never existed. The ministry also created people as historical figures who never existed. It manufactured Big Brother, who controlled the state of Oceania, using thought police to ensure that people in the inner outer party were kept under control. I think Facebook is taking over that responsibility. In the book, Oceania is at perpetual war with either Eurasia or East Asia. Alliances between these three states change without rational explanation. Hate weeks are organized against Goldstein, the leader of an alleged underground opposition to Big Brother, and hate sessions are organized against either Eurasia or East Asia. Many of the predictions made by Orwell in his book in relation to Big Brother, surveillance, corruption of language, control of history have already come into reality. They exist now in communist countries and to some extent right here in the West. Security police in the West have the power to intercept mail, tap phones. Sometimes these powers are extended. Police agencies keep numerous files on law-abiding citizens, and more public officials have the right to enter private homes without a warrant. Having worked with the police department for several years, I can tell you right now, if you call the police department, they put you in a file. If you make a report, a complaint, anything, they gather as much information about you, where you live, your phone number, the car you drive, your license plate number, all sorts of information you give them freely, and they keep all of it on file. They're not allowed to go out and surf the net, or in a sense, and gather this, but if you give it to them, they keep it. They used to have it on a mechanical rolling file. Now it's on a computer. And there was an article just this week about cameras that the police have on their person and how there's a software program that will capture your face just as they're walking through the crowd. And they put these faces on file, and there are people going to court to stop this from happening. It's an invasion of privacy. But the time is coming when there'll be no secrets and there'll be no private people unless you're living out in the woods in a cabin. Many government departments, all the way up to our federal government, are keeping information on people. And there's a danger that this information will then be fed into a centralized data bank. There's a need for law enforcement agencies to obtain information all the time. They can't help you if they don't have this information. And there are cameras everywhere, every major city, every community. You watch it now on the news. And even in some of the smaller communities, when something happens, inevitably they'll come up with a camera view of it, either from a store vantage point or on somebody's house, a camera that was there saw the kid walk by. They have access to information. And it's all justified under the rubric of keeping America safe. And it's legal. Now, how much of all of this is transforming us into a totalitarian society? Is Big Brother watching? Oh, yeah. Another area Orwell discussed was the corruption of language. He called it newspeak. In his world, it was democratic, socialist, fascist, war criminal, freedom fighter, racist, and other expressions used in deliberately deceptive, propagandistic ways to whip up mass hysteria or simply to ensure that people can never achieve even an approximation of the truth. Then there's the control of the past. The fact that almost all media commentary, book reviews, feature articles about the book 1984 have ignored the crucial role of controlling the past indicates Orwell's prophecy has already been partially fulfilled. We watch history programs, news programs, even comedy shows to get our news. We now have internet, email, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, you name it, where news items are flashed around the globe in seconds and are believed, for the most part, by people who have no idea whether they're true or they're not, but no real reason to believe that they're not true. If it's social media, trust me, it's either not true or it's seriously slanted. Unless they're telling you about the birth of their baby. But I mean, if the kids are doing it, the young adults are doing it, if the change agents are out there doing it, and they're telling us now they believe that some of these people have 20,000 Twitter accounts, and they can just write something and blast out on the Facebook and the Twitter and influence the whole society. It's happening. We're making decisions based on what we think is going on. Riots have been started over false narratives. Entire communities destroyed for lack of knowledge. A church with absolutely no idea what Christianity is, nor what God is doing in and through it. They don't know its purpose, let alone how it functions. Our own government controls what we know in order to maintain their grip on power, to orchestrate discussions, to motivate us in one direction or another. History is what we are taught in the state educational system. Television and now internet, documentaries, dramas, government reports, carefully crafted visions of events that in the past determine what we know. For example, that the political party largely responsible for maintaining slavery and later apartheid can be viewed as the savior of the black community is nothing short of a masterful crafting of history. The only thing that kept us from buying into the lie that the Benghazi attack on our embassy was the result of a video circulated in the Middle East were the eyewitnesses and fellow operatives who knew what was really going on in that embassy. They wrote a book. The book is entitled Benghazi, the Definitive Report. It was published 4.5 years ago, February 2013. Subsequent realities have demonstrated that these patriots were right. Everything that's in that book has come out as truth, ultimately. Due to the different systems of propaganda, people in different countries such as Russia, China, and even the United States do have quite different beliefs about the same historical events. But in a free country, should we not know the truth? It's what freedom is about. But our government says no. If national security is at stake, you have no right to know. They just released some stuff on Jack Kennedy and his assassination, but not all of it. You don't have the right to know all this stuff. Why not? You know why not. It'll embarrass them. It'll unmask certain people, or it'll unmask certain procedures, policies, things we were doing that we weren't supposed to be doing. All kinds of things like that. Our media says no. Our government says no. The media does it when the narrative doesn't fit what they're trying to push. And the government does it when they don't want you to know about stuff. Today, the centerpiece of information regarding the so-called Trump lies is called Fusion GPS, the dossier. It was introduced to the world through the Democrat Party. It has now been completely debunked as a made-up hoax. Now, I know it was a conservative group that put the money up initially, but they didn't follow through. Democrat followed through. And what does the media report? Only that the conservative political group commissioned it to start with. But what about the Democrats who have built their entire case on a report they knew was false? We may see who this week, since it seems that subpoenas have been either drawn up or at least requested by the special prosecutor. It could be interesting. But how much will we ever really know? This is America at the end of the age, a nation cut loose from its moorings, adrift in a sea of relativism, power-grabbing, and hate. It is George Orwell's prescient observation of 80 years ago. He says history stopped in 1936. Since then, all we really have had is propaganda. Propaganda in the sense that the news outlets and our government will not trust us with the full information, the full truth. Like guardian parents, they protect us. And in the mix, what else are they protecting us from? Without the internet, what would we really know? Without the internet and cable news, what could they have gotten away with? And how much have they gotten away with? Even so, Lord, come.